Life can be good, life can be hard, but life is truly special when it is filled with God's grace. Welcome back to the Grace-Filled Life. I am your host, Father Christopher DiTomo, pastor of St. Mary Parish in Huntley. Hello again to everyone listening on 101.5 Huntley Community Radio, and also anyone listening to us via podcast or on our new YouTube channel. It's great to be with you again. Please send us an email at onegracefilledlife@gmail.com, onegracefilledlife@gmail.com. If you have any questions, prayer requests, comments, we'd love to hear from you. And this show is all about just talking about grace and the life and love of God and prayer and Jesus Christ and how we can pursue happiness. You know, this is just the stuff that's on our hearts, and it's for everyone. This show is for everyone and for anyone, whether you're Catholic, non-Catholic Christian, not Christian. I'm just glad that you're listening or that you're watching. So today's topic is called Life is Not About Stuff. Life is not about stuff. The gospel today from Luke chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Again, so if you have your Bibles, break those out. And we're going to read through the gospel for today, for this Sunday, which is the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And we're going to contemplate the value of things. What do we get from the things that we have? What value do we give them? So we're going to go right into the gospel. This is from Luke chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed. For though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods. And I shall say to myself, now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, first of all, I like to smile at different things I read in the gospel, and my attention goes right away to where this gospel begins. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." Such an unusual thing. Obviously, Jesus is considered a teacher. He's a rabbi. So, okay. But it's just so funny how people in the Gospels, in these little snippets, they bring their own little agendas to Jesus. This actually reminds me of the gospel we heard a couple weeks ago, which was, I think it was a couple weeks ago. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago? Martha and Mary, where Jesus says, it was 2 weeks ago. Jesus says, or Martha says, to Jesus, "Tell my sister to help me." Like people use Jesus as this medium to carry out their beefs with other people. It's sort of funny, as if to say Jesus, who is God incarnate, right, doesn't have bigger things to do than get into a beef about inheritance. As a priest too, I have to say, all kidding aside, this is something you see a lot. You see it a lot when someone passes away. Maybe the inheritance is split kind of in a weird way, or maybe it's seen as it's unfair. People will fight. Families will fight. They'll stop talking to each other based on, money was not split properly, or so-and-so got more than someone else thinks they deserved. And sometimes maybe it's not really about the money. Sometimes it's about the perceived injustice or lack of fairness, or what they think it means about whether they were valued or not. But the point is, it's a terrible thing for something like money to destroy families, but it happens a lot. It happens a lot. Um, so Jesus doesn't want to get into this. He's like, I'm not here to judge this situation, but he uses it as an example to say, look, take care to guard against all greed. All greed. Though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. One's life does not consist of possessions. I remember there used to be like a bumper sticker back, probably like in the 80s. It's an old expression, but there used to be a bumper sticker that said, "The one who dies with the most toys wins." The idea was like, hey, if I got the boat and I got the nice car and the nice house and this and that, and the jet skis and all this, I've won. I've won at life. I got all the stuff, all the fun stuff. Obviously, we know that as Jesus says, life consists of more than just possessions. So we're going to kind of explore what does he mean by that. He gives a parable, and this parable is really fascinating. Here's this rich man. He has a good problem here. He's produced so much of so much crops that he's got this bountiful harvest, and he's like, I can't even store all these crops. And yet this is his wealth, right? This is his produce. And he thinks, boy, if I could just store all this stuff, this harvest, these crops, these represent for me just the opportunity to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I don't have to work anymore. I don't have to worry about starvation or going thirsty. It's security, and I can just kick back and relax, and it's great. And I think we can all relate at some level with this. Another question, as a kid, people would always ask you, like, what would you do if you won the lottery? What would you do? And then we start thinking like, oh, I'd do this, I'd buy this, or you have your dreams or your projects you would do. But we talk about that because it is a fantasy, isn't it? To like all of a sudden have a lot of wealth. And there's this idea that my life would just be radically different and better. And I'd have so fewer worries. And maybe to some degree that's true, right? We're gonna talk about that too, because money does help when you're in need of it. That's for sure. But here in the parable, notice this man is saying, look, I got this. I have too much crops. I have a problem. I don't know. I don't have a place to store it. This is actually not the man's real problem. Okay, the real problem is he's trapped in on himself. He's turned in on himself. He's only thinking about himself. In fact, it's funny that this dialogue he has this little inner, well, I guess maybe it's the monologue. I don't know. He's just talking to himself. And he says, I know what I will do. He says, now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, and be merry. So in other words, I'm going to tear down my barns, build larger storage barns, and then I'm going to have all this stuff stored up, and I can just party and enjoy and rest, and this is great. But we see here a little bit too, not only is there greed, and this man is reveling in his possessions and his stuff, but also what can come from greed? Often gluttony and sloth or sloth. Gluttony, he's like, we're just going to eat, drink, and be merry. Not that there's anything wrong with occasionally eating, drinking, and being merry. It's okay to enjoy the good things of creation. That's why we have festivals and parties, right? But is this what his life has become? Is it going to be simply, my life is just to consume material, physical things and pleasures, and he's just going to sit back and lay back? He's lazy at this point. And this is the thing. Now, wealth, and this is an ancient form of wealth, having a lot of harvest, a lot of food, a lot of grain, whatever, fruits, that's a symbol of, that's a kind of wealth. But wealth, in whatever form it is, whether it's in property or material things or money, certainly it can symbolize security, to know that if you have money, if we have a lot of wealth saved up, I don't have to worry about being without it or lacking it. So wealth for some people, it does symbolize that sense of security. But we have to also remember, while wealth can give some security, and it does, it does. I have a bank account. I have some money. I'm watching what I'm saving. I have to think about retirement like anyone else. But also, wealth cannot guarantee security, or control. We like control too. We like to be in control. And if we have wealth, we feel like we have more control. And that's true. Again, to some extent, that is true. But it cannot guarantee, wealth cannot guarantee security and control. Why do we know this? Look at the parable. This man has this plan. He's going to, build some bigger barns, store up his food, and just kick back and relax. But God says to him, "You fool." And when we see in the scriptures, someone's called a fool, this is actually a term that has to do with one who either forgets God or does not believe in God. So the fool is the one who has no wisdom, no fear of God, and their situation becomes sort of absurd because on their own strength, they can't stand. He says, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you." Imagine how bold and audacious it is, thinking, I'm just going to build these barns and just keep all my stuff and I'll be fine. Like, I'm in control of my life completely. I'm the master of my life. No, we're not. We're not the masters of our life. We have life. Life was given as a gift from God, and we belong to him. Our life belongs to God. We owe our lives to God. Our lives are on loan. We're here in this world temporarily, and it's God who ultimately calls us home whenever he wants. We can't control that. You can have the most wealth in the world, and you cannot. I mean, you might be able to get good medical treatment and all that, but you can't prevent yourself from dying completely. Death comes for all of us, right? And sickness comes for all of us. These are the things that sort of humble everybody, and wealth cannot protect us completely from those realities. And it's for this reason too that Jesus commanded us to be poor in spirit. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." He commended the poor in spirit. And to be poor in spirit is sort of the opposite of being the rich man, the man obsessed with possessions. To be poor in spirit is to say, I know I need God. I'm poor, which is to say, without God, I have nothing. I need to rely on God. And sometimes poverty, while it's not in itself necessarily a good thing, it can help a person to rely on God rather than trying to rely on themselves. Wealth can bring with it an illusion that we are gods of our own lives, that we're in 100% control. We have 100% security. We decide when things happen. The reality is we belong to God. And to be poor in spirit is to say, I rely on God. I'm going to trust in God and not on wealth. You could be a person who has a great wealth financially and still be poor in spirit because you're not relying on your wealth. You're not relying on your own material things. And also money and wealth can become idols. They can become gods. Anything that you take all of your attention to, all of your focus, all of your passion, all of your energy, all of your thoughts, well, that's a form of idolatry. If I dedicate all of my heart to something where I really should, this is the energy and my energy and my thoughts and my concern that should be devoted to God, when I'm giving it to some material thing, this is where idolatry comes in. So money, wealth can become gods. In our readings today, the second reading from Colossians has a nice connection here. It says, St. Paul says, "Brothers and sisters, if you were raised with Christ, seek what is above. Seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Think of what is above, not of what is on earth. For your life is hidden with Christ in God." So if we are raised with Christ, and we have been raised with Jesus through baptism, through faith, Christ, who is the center, should be the center of our heart, the core of our desire, our focus, he is not in this world. He is risen. He's ascended to heaven. So we have to kind of keep our minds on the heavenly things, not on the things of this world. Focusing too much on money and wealth really can turn us inward. And we're not meant to live lives where we're inward. We're meant to live lives turned outward to others. We remember that God created us for communion with other people. We're meant to rely on other people. We're meant to connect with other people, to give to other people, to receive from other people. And sometimes with wealth can come that illusion that I don't need anyone else. I think it wasn't it Howard Hughes who used to like wear gloves, and he kind of was like he was a very wealthy man, and he was eccentric, yes, but he was also kind of a recluse. He kind of turned inward on himself. That is what can happen with too much of a focus on wealth. Now, I want to think about retirement because right away when I read this parable, part of me thinks, hey, this is kind of like retirement. I've worked, I've taken my bounty, and I'm just going to chill out and relax and enjoy it. And is there anything wrong with that, Father? What's wrong with retirement? No, there's nothing wrong with retirement. Okay. Although I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. So the first thing, especially if someone works a job that's very physical, hard work, yeah, like if you work a job that's physically demanding, or maybe psychologically demanding, or mentally demanding, an intense work that you do, yeah, in a special way, you're really going to enjoy saying, "I'm going to rest from that work." That's fine. That's good. But we have to always ask, and I put this to anyone who is in retirement. I'm obviously not retired. I'm not going to be retired for like a long time. But my parents are retired. I know retired people. There's a lot of retired people at our church. Um, the question is, what am I doing with my retirement? I think you have to go into retirement with a plan, because it can be a real hard shift to go from working your whole life to then not having a busy schedule. What do you do? Because you could end up just saying, look, I have money. I don't need to work. I could just sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labor. I'm going to, as the parable says, rest, eat, drink, and be merry. Again, not that there's anything wrong with doing those things, but if we focus on just resting and eating and drinking and being merry, then our retirement can be basically exclusively me time, me time. And we want to ask ourselves, when retirement comes in, do you want to use it as, okay, this is more time to rest? That's good. It's good to rest. It's also more time for prayer. Retired people have more time to pray. They have time to go to daily mass more so than working people usually. But like, do I use more time to read good books, to contemplate, to pray? Also, it's a time where you can do more service, to be honest. You can do a volunteer work that you probably couldn't do when you were super busy or when you were raising your children, to be a mentor to someone, to take the wisdom that you received in life and you pass it on to someone else. You model it for someone else. See, this is where in your time of rest, you're also giving. I think as human beings, we're meant to live lives as givers, not just consumers. And it can be real easy just to be, retired and say, well, I'm just going to sit and watch TV, or I'm just going to play golf. There's nothing wrong with playing golf. Nothing wrong with it. Unless you're me, and I'm terrible at golf. It's not fun because I'm so bad. But there's nothing wrong with playing golf. But like, maybe not just play golf, try to have a balanced life. So these are just things to think about when we're thinking about wealth and storing up wealth, rest. I want to do now a little bit of a little bit of an examination of conscience here. These are some questions that I think we can all ask ourselves and maybe pray about. The first one is there a material thing in my life that I focus all my energy on? Is there a material thing in my life that I focus all my energy on? It could be it could be money, it could be the stock market, it could be things you collect, it could be things you spend money on. Is there any kind of inordinate attachment to material things that I have? That's one question. The second question is, do I trust material wealth more than I trust God? Again, in this world, we do need money to a degree. I'm not saying, we can not think about it at all. No, of course not. But do I trust material wealth more than I trust God? Am I generous with my wealth? There's always that balance. We want to say, look, I know I need to save up for my retirement, but I also want to give money to charity. I want to give money to the church. I want to give money to help out a family member or a friend or a person who's in need. I mean, these are things I do. I save my money, but I'm always trying to make a decision. Can I afford to help this person with this, or a family member? I don't want to just be out of fear, driven by fear in terms of how I relate to my own money. Another question is, do I use the money I have or the possessions I have? Do I use these things for the glory of God, or do I use them for my own glory? If you look around the stuff that you have, the possessions, is it all about just your own glory? Or is it like, do I use the wealth that I have? Do I try to use it for good? Do I try to use it to glorify God, to support the values that I have? Do I spend or save excessively? That's a good question. I think you could save excessively. Yeah, I mean, saving's a good thing, but a person could be a miser where they're just like penny pinching to the point where maybe it's based out of fear, and it's preventing them or their family from enjoying life in a reasonable way. So that's a good question. Even just to ask yourself, why, if I'm spending so or saving so much, is there a reason? Like, is it normal, or is this based out of some fear from my past or from growing up not having money or something? And then spending. Why do I spend money? Some people spend money because they're struggling with something. They're, sad. So they say, well, I'll just go to Amazon and boom, a package comes and like I feel better all of a sudden. It's really good to reflect on why we buy things that we do, and to not let that be some form of an escape. There was a religious order once that I think they were Franciscans, and they said that every year, now granted, they're not collecting a lot of stuff, okay, and they're taking a vow of poverty, but they would always look around at their monastery and say, they would look at everything they have and they would say, do these things help us in our mission? If they don't, we're going to get rid of them. If it does help us, we'll keep it. Now, maybe it helps them in a minor way, like, okay, I got bowls and I need to eat food and all that. Okay, fine. But like the idea that they didn't just hoard or accumulate stuff, they were conscious about how they were possessing things. And is there really a need? And can we simplify? Can we simplify? Another question for an examination here is, at the end of the day, how do I view material things? Am I rich in what matters to God? Am I rich in what matters to God? There was a gospel in Luke's gospel. There's a parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And the rich man is somebody, he has, he dines on fine cuisine every night. And he's got these fine purple garments and yet, who is outside his door every night but this poor man named Lazarus? And the rich man just neglects Lazarus, and he doesn't care about him, and he dies. And in the parable, he is in hell, he's in torment, because the basic message is, you enjoyed the good things of life in this world, and Lazarus didn't. But now, in death, Lazarus is the one who is in the bosom of Abraham. He's the one who is experiencing the blessings of God. And the rich man is in torment because he chose essentially to focus on the material things of this world instead of a person like Lazarus who God had near him, who he could have helped. He could have been merciful towards him. And that's where I think about this. What matters am I rich in what matters to God? What matters to God is not, how much nice clothes I have or what possessions I have, but the mercy that I have towards other people, the relationships I have and take care of, the people I love, the way I take care of my responsibilities. That's what matters to God. Am I rich in those things? Am I rich in those things? It's a good question. I want to end with just a couple examples of two saints. The first one's St. Francis of Assisi. You know his story. He lived in, I want to say this too. St. Lawrence, there's a story about St. Lawrence. He was martyred, and he was a deacon in Rome. And the Roman emperor kind of said, I want you, Lawrence, you're the deacon. You're the one that's in charge of all the church's wealth. So I want you to go and gather up all the church's wealth and then bring it to me. And then the story goes that Lawrence went around and brought to the emperor all of the poor of Rome. And he said, this is the church's treasure. This is the poor. I don't think the emperor probably laughed at that. Probably, led in part to Lawrence's martyrdom. But his point was well taken. This is what matters to God, is the poor in spirit. And Lawrence was like, our riches it's not the gold chalices we have or the vestments. You need that stuff for worship of God. You need beautiful, precious things. That's okay. But this is not really our treasure. It's the poor. It's other human persons who are loved by God and redeemed by Christ. Francis of Assisi lived that way too. He abandoned his wealth and famously because his father he started off as a sort of a playboy, just having fun, had a serious illness that got him thinking about the emptiness of that life, of the sensual life, just eating, drinking, and being merry. And he started to delve deep into prayer. The Lord started to speak to his heart. And eventually he embraced poverty. He forsook his possessions. His father didn't like that, of course, because his father had plans. His father thought, you could take over my business, and this is just, a reputable man should have wealth and material success. And he saw Francis as an embarrassment. But the reality is, St. Francis, he actually took off his clothes, believe it or not, publicly, and gave them back to his father and said, "Now you are no longer my father. It's only my Father in heaven who is my father." But Francis, with his embracing of poverty, was able to have a certain new relationship with God and a special freedom. He was a mendicant. The mendicants were people that begged for alms, they begged for food, they begged for money, and he relied on the providence of God. Elizabeth of Hungary was another such woman. She died in the year 1231. She was a queen. She loved her husband, had 3 kids, but he died while on one of the crusades. And Elizabeth of Hungary just embraced service to the poor. She converted one of her castles into a hospital for the weak and the feeble. She used to go out and give bread at the gates where all the poor would assemble. In fact, she got kicked out of the royal house at one point because her husband's family thought she was being too much of a spendthrift with the royal wealth. She was using it all for the poor. But she eventually sold her possessions and rich clothes, all for the sake of the poor. She was a great contemplative woman. But the point being there that she was rich in what mattered to God. She was rich in charity, and she could have really allowed the trappings of wealth and possessions to be her focus, the source of her pride, the source of her self-esteem, but she didn't. She had her heart focused on the Lord, on Jesus Christ risen from the dead, and she wanted to treasure the poor. Now, what about those who have the opposite problem? They are involuntarily poor, those who are struggling financially. You might hear this podcast and think, "Father, I can't relate to this because I'm poor. I don't want to be poor. I just am poor." And that might be a tough road of obviously the road of trusting God and in his providence. And you do what you can, you do the work you can, but then you also trust the Lord and rely on the Christian community to help other people. And maybe if you're someone listening to this, you could look around you and see, who in my life can I help who might be struggling? But as we look at our possessions, let's just try to be intentional about whether we're using them for good purpose, whether they're a distraction, how we can use our possessions, our wealth, for the glory of God. Next week, we're going to be looking at Catholic Mythbusters again, the Catholic Mythbusters series. The myth we're going to look at is that Catholics are saved by works alone. Are we saved by what we do only? And that's not true. But it's a myth, and we're going to bust it next week. We're going to look at, how does one become saved? How is it? Is it grace? Is it faith? Is it works? Is it a combination of all of it? We'll look at it. We'll pray through it, discuss it. Until then, remain blessed. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.